I don't know about you, but I see posts on social media all the time about how we as humans are not symmetrical beings, and therefore there's no need to even attempt to achieve symmetry in our physique via training. But some symmetry does matter. Symmetry between the left and the right limbs, symmetry in strength, and symmetry in muscle mass. And even some symmetry in the posterior and anterior muscles at given joints like the knee, so quadriceps versus hamstrings, matter too. Symmetry just refers to two or more opposing parts being in correct proportions. The skeleton and the musculoskeletal system is a different organ system than your other organs like the digestive system, which contains your stomach, liver, and pancreas. Pointing out that the heart is on the left side and not the right side of the body, and then concluding that we're not symmetrical is completely misguided. It doesn't mean anything regarding the symmetry of muscle mass between the right and the left limbs, or even the muscle mass and strength of posterior and anterior muscles at given joints. And that sure as hell doesn't mean that we shouldn't aim for some degree of symmetry between the left and the right limbs and posterior and anterior muscles at some joints. There have been several published studies looking at hamstrings to quadriceps strength ratio and non-contact leg injuries. This absolutely relates to symmetry. Depending on the study, you'll find different ratios associated with ACL injury risk. But some common figures published can show that anywhere between 50 and 60% or lower in hamstring strength compared to quad strength puts you at an increased risk of non-contact ACL injuries. Sure, some and probably most examples of asymmetries don't matter. For example, I'm unaware of any issues with a shoulder flexion versus shoulder extension asymmetry, or a hip extension versus a hip flexion asymmetry. Even having a significant amount of muscle mass in your right thigh compared to your left thigh is associated with knee and ankle injuries. That's not necessarily to say that we know what the mechanisms of those injuries are. We don't. It's just a correlation. And because we can't predict which side of the body is more likely to get injured, we don't know if it's the more muscular side or the left muscular side. This imbalance between the right thigh and the left thigh for those who have experienced an ACL injury is a contributing factor to re-injury. It's likely not the sole reason, but it is a contributing factor. When someone tears their ACL, the injured side quad atrophies. This leads to an asymmetry of both muscle mass and strength of that quad. As they return to sport, if this imbalance still exists, they're at a higher risk for re-injury. And again, not all asymmetries matter, and most of them probably don't need to be addressed with any sort of specific protocol, but some do. I'm fully aware of many PTs and ATs just blaming injuries on asymmetries without putting any sort of critical thought into it. When I was still a collegiate strength coach, I witnessed that far too often. And their solution usually involves strengthening the weaker muscle with some bullshit banded external rotation exercise or something. When discussing muscular imbalances or asymmetries, it's important to be specific on what the asymmetry is. Is it an asymmetry in muscle mass? Is it an asymmetry in strength? Is it left to right? Is it posterior to anterior? Just don't get carried away with the blanket statement that we as humans aren't symmetrical, because that just leads to thinking that none of it matters, but some of it does, and a lot of it can be addressed via training. So that's just my quick rant on asymmetries. It's kind of a middle of the road position, but I think it's the correct position. Some of it matters, some of it doesn't, but your muscular system is a different organ system than things like your intestines, your pancreas, your heart. Comparing them is like apples to oranges. Just because certain organ systems aren't symmetrical, that doesn't mean that your muscular system shouldn't be. Hopefully that all makes sense. Thanks for watching the video. I'll see you next time.